He is our friend, Mr. Dan Duquette, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Dan, it's Glenn and Paul back in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you as always, sir. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Everything is good. How you doing? What's up? What's going on in your world?
Good. Well, baseball is back, right?
Yeah. It's significant for sure.
Yeah. So I'm doing some consulting. I have a couple of clients that are in the pro sports space that I've been working with, and that's what I've been doing. And we've also been delivering some critical PPE for some large institutions. We
awesome.
made a delivery to the state of Maryland last year, so that's what I've been up to.
Well, that's wonderful, Dan. That's an incredible thing for you to do. Is obviously we all needed to do our part during the course of the last couple of years, so I appreciate you doing that. So
yeah, thank you.
When you heard about everything that went into the new CBA, what jumped out at you as being like the most impactful part of it for the game of baseball?
Well, I thought the most important part that would redistribute some of the resources was that the younger players were going to be paid better. And you saw the increase in the minimum salary for the young players. You saw the appropriation of another $50 million appropriated to the young players before they were eligible for the arbitration process. And so the players that are performing when they come into the league with less experience are going to be rewarded by making more money on a base salary, and then the ones that perform are also going to be given some additional money. So I thought that was the best part for the players, because that, the clubs are dependent on these young players to come up and do a job, and these players are getting rewarded for contributing earlier in their career. So I thought that was the best thing that came out of this agreement.
Dan, do you feel like everything that's been done between that and the draft lottery will end the concept of full-on tanking in baseball? Do you feel like the lengths that were taken will do away with the idea of like a full-on – obviously, there are always going to still be bad teams, right? Like not everybody can win 90 games every year. But do you feel like this is enough that tanking, purposeful tanking for multi-years, will be something that we no longer see in the sport?
Well, I hope so. I've never been a proponent of tanking. I think you should try to look at your club and try to do as much as you can to help your club be competitive every year, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to come up and blossom, and you don't know when you're going to have the pitching together, and you don't know when your injuries are going to happen. And a couple of clubs that tried the rebuild, strip down the major league club, lose 100 games. A couple of clubs were successful doing that.
Yep.
And then everybody thought that they could go ahead and follow that model and do it. Okay. But not everybody can do it.
Sure.
We've seen that not everybody can do it.
Right. We don't know if it's going to work in Baltimore or not, Dan. We have no clue whether or not it's going to end up working.
Yeah. So, if you miss out on a couple of draft picks, your timeline is changed dramatically. And guess what? Your product today is not that good. And when it's not that good, people find other things to do and follow. So I'm more of a, you should be trying to win as many games as you can now. You should be trying to compete as much as you can for today's game, and then worry about tomorrow's tomorrow. Now that doesn't mean that I don't put together a long-term plan, or a 3-year long-term plan, or a 5-year long-term plan. But I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, there's too many things when you're running a baseball club. There's too many things that are outside your control. Injuries, change in ownership, change in baseball rules. So I think a lot of these clubs come in and they don't consider what it's like to follow a team for a long period of time and not be very good for a long period of time. You know, I mean, it's hard to maintain your enthusiasm for that kind of club unless there's some light at the end of the tunnel, or unless they're out competing. And you know, you saw the fans come back out in Baltimore after we gave them a competitive team. I mean, you saw that pent up demand, you saw that pent up enthusiasm. We had a rain delay for our first playoff game with the Yankees.
I remember it well.
And you know, they asked some people in the stands, some of the media outlets that were there, are you going to go home? And they said, hell no, I'm not going home. I've been waiting for a playoff game
15 years.
For, you know, 15 years. I'm not going to 30 more minutes isn't going to bother me.
No doubt.
I'm going to go see. And then, you know, that was the loudest. It was, you know, I mean, TVS measured it, and the response of the Baltimore fans was the loudest they've ever heard. So I think you got to get after it. You know, will a couple of those things help teams focus on the here and the now and being competitive? Yes, I think they will.
Okay.
I think those will be helpful, and I think that's a step in the right direction. But I think some of these, you know, like the NFL has done so well because their clubs are very competitive, right?
Yep.
Those games go down to the last minute. There's great drama in those games. You see all those playoff games decided on the last play of the game this year?
Yep, that one weekend, every single one. Yes, correct.
That is so compelling. So, you know, baseball has a revenue disparity from market to market that they don't have in the NFL. So, you know, baseball has some more work to do to find ways to, you know, make some of these teams a little bit more competitive year in, year out. But I got to tell you, you know, some teams can do it, other teams can't. And there's some small market teams doing some great work that are competitive year in and year out. But you know, there's a number that aren't.
He is Dan Duquette. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Dan, I want to go a couple places based on what you just said there, and I'll go here. I feel like there are still critics of where baseball is that would say, why are you doing a collective bargaining agreement and the conversation of a salary cap and a salary floor don't come up? Like, why are we still at a place where, in order to make the game more competitive and to speak to, you know, what you're talking about, the success of football, to try to drive those things home in order to make there less disparity between small market and big market clubs? Are we, when we bring those things up, are we just shouting into the wind? Because it just sort of seems like it's never going to happen with the sport, no matter what anybody believes is best for it. Those conversations appear to be non-starters whatsoever.
Well, I mean, those conversations are conversations among the owners of the teams. I think the owners have, you know, some cost certainty under the current structure, right?
Yep.
And then they have some guidelines on the top end of the scale. If clubs want to go over the guidelines, they can pay a penalty to the other clubs that's redistributed. So I think that's done. As far as the minimum salary, I was glad to see the minimum salary go up, but I think those are discussions that, you know, could be had at Central Baseball to try to come up with a solution. But you know, I thought the 12 teams for the playoffs, that gives more fan bases hope during the season that their team can make the playoffs. And a lot of teams have made the playoffs at that wild card and have advanced to win the championship. So that's a viable option. You know, sometimes late in the season, you get your team together, guys come up from the minor leagues, you make a couple of trades, and like what the Braves did this past year, you know, they got their team going at the right time, and they had that young pitching to come up through the minor leagues. You know, and they went all the way. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. More teams can be in the playoffs and be alive later in the season.
I agree on that, by the way, Dan. I think that's a good thing, and I think that should help for more teams to be interested in trying to be competitive going into the season, right?
Yeah.
Let me go this route if I could. Can I present a hypothetical to you, Dan? I want to
I don't usually answer hypotheticals, but go ahead.
I think you'll know where I'm going, though. Let's just say you were the general manager of a baseball team today, and they had, say, the top prospect in all of baseball. And let's just even say that top prospect's name was like Adley Rutschman, all right? Just hypothetically, we'll go that route. The rules now say that, hey, if you bring your guy up on opening day and sacrifice that year of service time, you can get draft pick compensation for that. What exactly that is, I still haven't been able to get anybody to define for me, but there can be draft pick compensation for you if you bring your guy up on opening day, the hell with the service time thing, and he ends up having an outstanding season and he's in the top 5 of Rookie of the Year voting. If you bring him up 3 weeks later and he ends up in the top 5 of Rookie of the Year voting, you're going to end up losing that year of service time anyway, so you might as well bring him up. But there's, of course, still the scenario where you bring him up, he has a decent season, he's not in the top 5 of Rookie of the Year voting, and you get to keep an extra year of service time anyway. Is the rule change with the draft pick compensation enough that you feel like general managers and organizations will put their top prospects on their opening day roster, or do you still think there's a scenario by which they say, no, it's just still not worth it to us. We need to prioritize making sure we keep an extra year, and the difference in a couple of weeks is just not significant enough?
Yeah, well, I mean, clubs are going to decide that on a case-by-case basis. I think you'd have to take a look at, what kind of, gravitas you have with your team, right? How many really good difference maker players that are difference makers do you have, and how long can you keep that group together? I remember when I took over the Expos, I took a look at the players in our farm system, the players we had on our major league team, and I said, we're going to have a terrific team, 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the 94 Expos. But I knew all the players. I could project them. I knew what their ages were going to be. I knew what their abilities were going to be. I knew how much time they had in the major leagues and what else they needed to do to develop their skills to be top quality major leaguers. And we put all our focus on having a great team on 94. Unfortunately,
yeah, it didn't. Right, right.
It was a strike year,
yeah.
But that's when we had that crew together, right?
Yep.
That's when that crew was blossoming from the minor leagues. That's when that organization was maturing. So, I think that's like on a case by case basis. Each organization will have to take a look at it, and in the Orioles case, they'll have to take a look at, when they think that these players that they have in the minor leagues will mature and be big leaguers. And then they'll have to take into account what they currently have in the big leagues and how long they can keep that group together under the current constraints of their market. But, the good thing is that when you get a good competitive team and your team is good, the fans notice, right? They come out and they watch them. They watch them on TV. They come to the ballpark, and that allows you to, do some economic planning as well. So, but I don't think that really answers your question.
And I get that it's tough by case. I guess I'm coming back to, is it as simplistic as saying, if there's a risk of a guy ending up in the top 5 of Rookie of the Year voting anyway, and I think we all think if you've got the number 1 prospect in baseball, whoever he is, there's probably a fairly good risk of that. That why wouldn't you just put him on the opening day roster to begin with, because you could at least recoup some draft pick compensation if that were the case?
Well, right. And how old is Adley Rutschman?
He's 24. Yeah, he's 24.
23 or 24 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
When do catchers peak in the major leagues? Adley Rutschman's got all the tools to be a good major league player. He had experience in Double A. I saw him last year playing Triple A. He looked pretty good to me. Looks like he's ready age-wise and skill-wise. He played at a major college program too, right?
Yeah, won a College World Series, in fact, at
Oregon
State.
So,
yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of good qualities. Looks to me like he's probably ready for the big leagues. What the Orioles do, I mean, that's up to them. But based on his age and his skills, he's probably ready for the big leagues. And that provision in the new collective bargaining agreement is supposed to encourage teams to look at, including the very best players in the big leagues. I mean, I think the fans all over baseball, right? They like to see the best players.
Yep.
They like to see the best players in the big leagues. I mean, that's why they call it the big leagues, right? That's what it's about.
100%. Yeah. If the guy's ready, let's have him here. What are we doing? What are we sitting around waiting? But we've also always understood it. You needed to make good business decisions for your organization. Like it was foolish to say we'll bring him up today when there's a genuine benefit to just waiting for 2 weeks in order to bring him up. So we've always understood it.
Sure. You get another year. You got to get another year of control on the other end.
Dan, if I could, I want to run more by, and I know I appreciate the time that you spent with us this morning. There was a report a couple weeks ago that the Orioles were interested in Carlos Correa, which seemed crazy, right? Because as you know, this is an organization that has never spent that type of money on a ball player. Like that's never happened. We're talking about 10 years and $300+ million. At some point, if this thing is going to work out, if when you do something like this, do you need to spend that type of money on a baseball player? Do you need to say, hey, if we're going to be serious, we might have to do something we've never done before in order to make this work? Because just counting alone on all of our draft picks and all these guys all being hits, that might not be enough to make yourself a championship. You guys, obviously, you did everything you could, right? You had all the talent and it, unfortunately, a couple of injuries, and it didn't work out in 2014. Do you need to be willing to go that route of spending that type of big money in order to close the gap?
Yeah, well, having a good team year in and year out is more about having a proven philosophy for developing your team. And the best way to develop a team, to have a good team year in and year out, is to have a strong farm system and aggressive scouts that can identify talent. That is the best way. That's the only way I know it, so that you can have a foundation of talent in your organization. Adding players and spending money, you can do that at any time once you see that you have the foundation of talent to have a good team. But until you build up your players and the bulk of the players that you have in your system, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to say we got to go out and spend a bunch of money.
Okay.
We got to have a bunch of good players first.
Right.
And then we can spend money. You can spend money anytime if you think that's what's going to do it for you.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
But I'd much rather have a bunch of good players that have that our scouts have signed and that have been developed in our player development operation first.
If you go right now to @Dan Duquette on Twitter, you'll find some more information about Duquette Consulting. Dan Duquette, I always appreciate you taking the time. If when you hear that the shift was banned, do you ever think to yourself, like, maybe we couldn't have done that a few years ago to help Chris Davis out a little bit? Like, hey, just
well, okay, think about the shift for a second, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. The left-handed hitters, they're up there to hit. Okay. They did not make the adjustment to try to bunt.
No.
To deter the defense from doing that to them. Okay, which they could have done that, right? All you had to do was bunt and be successful 1 out of 4 times, and the odds are in your favor, right? And then maybe they won't play that other infielder in short field and right field and take away your one-hop line drive base hits between the first and second baseman, okay? But they didn't do that, okay? But the fans, they don't come out to see the players bunt, okay?
That's a fact.
It's a hitting game. When I throw the ball in the backyard and my 7-year-old wants to bunt, I said, wait a second. This is batting practice, okay? This isn't bunting practice, okay? We're here to hit, and that's what the fans want to see. They want to see the players hit the ball.
I believe Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine said chicks dig the long ball, Dan. I believe that's the way.
Well, that's true. Baseball baseball came back in the late '90s when
Yep.
all those guys hit the home runs out of the ballpark. But I don't know that how many people buy a ticket to go see the players bunt down the third baseline.
It's a great point. It's a great point, and it was never rewarded, and so this is where we are. I almost think it's a necessary evil, right? Like I wish the players would have adjusted to it, but they haven't, and I think for the betterment of the game of baseball, you kind of have to go this route in order to get some better action. Dan,
Yeah, I mean they have some restrictions on what defenses you can play in the NBA, and they have some restrictions on where you can set up and play defense in the NFL. So this is not something new. This is just something that MLB made an adjustment on to try to get a little bit more action in their game to make the games more attractive to the younger fans. They're trying to appeal to younger fans to replenish and get them to connect with Major League Baseball.
Dan Duquette, we could talk for hours, and I would like to do that, but I understand that you have like a real life and you make money doing things, so I'm going to need to let you go. Always
good to talk to you guys.
Thank you for taking the time this morning. We really
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thanks
Sir.
a lot. Take it easy.